Hey, what do you say there, women's basketball fans? Erica L. Ayala here with Roberta Rodrigues, and this is going to be our All-Star preview. Now, we don't exactly have a theme yet for the new and upcoming um, podcast for the Seattle Storm, so you know how we do. We're going to play our Gotta Get Up intro. Here it goes. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Hey, women's basketball fans, welcome to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans brought to you by Black Rosie Media and hosted by Erica L. Ayala. Hey, JC and everyone else. Welcome to a squad cast. So Roberta and I started a new Seattle Storm podcast, and we might need to come to you to finalize our actual title, but we'll get to that in a minute. But you know how we do. This is another episode also of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. Brian Fleurantin will be joining us. Misha Jones is somewhere here in Phoenix, Arizona, and also the new podcast that she is co-producing has dropped. So if you haven't checked that out, Good Game, hosted by Sarah Spain, definitely go check that out. But all right, we have a lot of topics, and I already told Roberta that I'm very close to hangry, so we're gonna blaze through this. That's what happens when you don't plan your meals on a super long travel day. And this is the first leg, Roberta, of my trip.
Oh my God, yeah.
Then I go to New York for like 24 hours. Then I'm in London for 24 hours. And then it is the Paris Olympics. I'm so excited.
I am so excited for you. I am also very tired for you. But just so happy that you're going on this trip and this cool adventure. It's such a privilege to be able to participate of an Olympic event in any capacity. But as a media member, that is something that I haven't experienced, and it is really cool that you're getting to do that. And I strive to achieve that someday.
Hey,
It's
well,
just super cool to work with someone who is, an Olympic official Olympic media. That's super cool.
Yes. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And the hope is that we will continue that here at Black Rosie Media. This is the second Olympics. Technically, I went to Beijing pre-Black Rosie and our official launch. But what we're going to do is, and actually I'm going to take this chance to promote this, but we have new subscription model. So one is a pop-up or limited run newsletter that I will be contributing to. Roberta, I know you've got some fun stuff we're going to be planning as well, but this is an opportunity if you really want to lock into what's happening on the Olympics. You can subscribe to that. We also have Black Rosie Media Lite. That's all of the free stuff. So everything that we have for free, the podcasts, we're going to do a better job of also posting on the website. You can get that directly to your inbox. But then also, if you want to join the newsletter and you want more exclusive content year-round, then you can become a part of our Black Rosie Media Silver. And what we're eventually going to do is, because we're going to relaunch our women's hockey podcast. We're in conversations to get some more women's soccer, more consistent women's soccer content. So you'll get all access to basketball right now on that program. And then as we continue to level up, you can also get everything on Black Rosie Media, or you can hone in on one or specific sports that you want to learn about. So go check out, we're calling it the Gold Medal Dispatch, and that's going to be for every Olympics. We'll do a pop-up newsletter. So this one, of course, we're starting for Paris. So go check that out over at blackrosiemedia.com. I saw in the comments like, hey, just finished the first episode of Good Game. Okay, so then y'all know that Misha Jones took our shtick not to make it all about logistics over, I was like, Sarah Spain took my shtick. What's going on there? No, I love it. That's how passionate Misha is. MJ, as she's going by on Good Game. She's very passionate. They're very passionate about, of course, the Washington Mystics, as Sarah Spain is about all Chicago sports. And being a New Yorker, Spainer and I have definitely clashed heads a few times. Yes, the Marina Mabrey trade, we have that on the list. So much that we have to get to. Good evening, Aloysius. Now, okay, since this is the All-Star special, we are going to talk about the Seattle Storm. We are going to talk about the New York Liberty, because I think both teams have had a really good end to the first half of the regular season. But I feel like we maybe have to, Roberta, talk about what seems to be the elephant on social media, Twitter, and that is 3-point contest. Well, there's so many, right? There's multiple elephants, including Ellie, who will be here in Phoenix. There's multiple elephants, but I feel like the biggest one, at least as I was traveling to Phoenix, is that 3-point contest without not only Sabrina Ionescu, but also without Caitlin Clark. Now, there seems a lot more controversy when Caitlin Clark was snubbed from USA Basketball than there seems to be from Caitlin Clark, according to Doug Feinberg, opting not to participate in the 3-point contest. What were your thoughts when you heard those two superstars were not going to be competing?
You know, I have very different opinions about the absence of both of them. Somehow, I think that Sabrina staying out means makes a little more sense, just because she's already the 3-point tournament champion. She represented the WNBA against Steph Curry in the NBA game. She is going to the Olympics. She's playing the All-Star game, and honestly, she already has her name made and established in the WNBA. So I think she does have an out when it comes to playing in the 3-point contest. I think it makes sense that she wants to, enjoy that moment perhaps, and just watch her friends and her coworkers play. Now for Caitlin Clark, I don't really watch the NBA, but if Steph Curry in his first year, he didn't start as hot as her in the NBA, but let's say Steph Curry came off college as hot as Caitlin Clark because of his shots, and he refused to play the 3-point contest, that would be weird. That would be off. And I think that this would be a great opportunity, not for more people to watch Caitlin Clark, because everyone watches Caitlin Clark, but for her to add something else to her WNBA resume. Yes, it's an All-Star game. It's it's festivities, it's celebration, but it means something, especially when you're a rookie, and you still have to prove yourself out there. And I don't know, every time that I talk about Caitlin Clark, I get scared that people are gonna say all sorts of stuff.
No, we ain't never scared of the internet. The trolls, I am an expert when it comes to annihilating trolls. So say what you got to say, Roberta. Listen, our opinions are our own. And I think you made a good point. And it's kind of like Aloysius is saying, like, for marketing, it's super bad. A lot of people saying it's quote unquote a bad look. And here's the thing, like, I agree with you to an extent. She's not going to the Olympics. There's all this made about how Caitlin Clark single-handedly did everything from get charter flights to now the new deal, the new market or broadcast deal that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Like all of these things, right? Allegedly, all the Caitlin Clark truthers out there have been saying this is all on her back, single-handedly. Yeah. And it's really interesting how the interwebs are pretty quiet or are blaming the WNBA for Caitlin Clark opting not to participate in the 3-point contest. Do you think that there is any world that exists where Kathy Engelbert was not trying to move heaven and earth to get Caitlin Clark to agree? Why would she not? Why would she not?
Like someone mentioned here in the comments, on the marketing side, having both Sabrina and Caitlin Clark out of that context is a big miss, not on the WNBA side, but for the WNBA. That's going to take viewership from them, and this is a moment where they just can't let anything drop. You
Yeah.
know, the league is under scrutiny more than ever. More people are watching, and with Caitlin Clark, there are the new fans, like, you burst the bubble, so there are opinions that weren't here before, that don't fully understand what the landscape is like. So yeah, I think that it's not the WNBA has no fault in Caitlin Clark missing that game. It was her opinion, was her option, which
Mhm.
she's fully entitled to. Like, no one is saying that she
Right.
has to participate,
Right.
just. But what bothers me the most is that her fan base operates in the, like, she has no fault on anything.
Anything.
Everyone, it's everyone else's fault, and we're going
Yeah.
to go at them as hard as we can. You
Yeah.
saw, I mean, we saw everything that happened this first stretch of the season. We are now seeing the WNBA being blamed for Caitlin Clark choosing not to go when Neko Gumake announced that, there's even more um, prize money for the players
Yes,
this year.
Aflac came in big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can talk about that as well. Yeah, I agree with you, and I know we're gonna bring in Brian here in just a minute to get his thoughts. Brian from Brooklyn, what up? What up?
Hello, hello. I love Brooklyn, but what I don't love is the good old MTA. Like
uh,
I got,
I don't miss those days.
yeah, I got to my train early. They was like, "We not moving." I fell asleep for 15 minutes. I woke up. We're still there. I'm like, "Let me turn around." So I'm here, but I'm
Oh
excited to
my
be here
God.
today.
Well, we are so grateful for all of the sacrifices that we all have made to be here. I appreciate y'all so much. Brian, we were just chiming in on and I don't really know what the biggest story is, but it feels like it made sense to lead the All-Star preview with the fact that not only Caitlin Clark, but also Sabrina Ionescu not competing in the three-point contest. Now, we do have New York Liberty representation in Jonquel Jones, as you can see in the chat, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But Brian, I mean, last game before the All-Star break, Sabrina Ionescu asked right on the court in front of the fans, and she gave a no comment to the All-Star skills competition, three-point contest in particular. Now, you know this, Brian, as someone who covers the New York Liberty beat. Sabrina Ionescu has been pretty open. So have the New York Liberty, quite honestly, about not feeling that they're connecting from the perimeter as much as they want to. And we just got,
Mhm.
as we went live here, Sabrina Ionescu, another Player of the Week honor for the Eastern Conference, which, again, what does that even mean anymore in the WNBA except for awards? But on the Western Conference, surprise, surprise, it's Asia Wilson. But another Player of the Week, we do see that the shot, and we're going to get into the New York Liberty down the stretch. The shot was critical in some of these wins in the last 4 games against teams that we said they had to win against. But what are your thoughts about Sabrina specifically, Brian, not competing in the three-point contest?
I think I found it pretty interesting because I feel like when you have a contest like she did last season in Las Vegas, you're never gonna top that again. So it's like, oh, why should I eat like it's like everything is gonna go down from here. So I left with the record. I left as the undisputed champion.
Going out on top.
Yep, go out on top. And then in February, I had that big competition during the other All-Star weekend, and I put on a show there. So it's like, I guess for Sabrina, I guess when she comes back, I might ask her about it. It's like
I'm gonna ask her about it in Phoenix. And here's my thing. I think Sabrina, and I believe it was Megan, right, who was the sideline reporter for My Nine for the last game before the break, was reporting that not only Sabrina, but other Olympians and even reporters like myself who are about to follow basically the same schedule that they have. I was freaking out about trying to pack for a dang month. And
Yeah.
so they're going from Phoenix to, well, I'm assuming they're going straight to London. But if they're going to New York, I'll also be going to New York, then to London, and then to Paris. So they have to pack all of these different things, be at their prime. And it just seemed like Sabrina, the quote was from Sabrina, but it seems like, again, a lot of these players, especially like Sabrina Ionescu is a first-time or soon-to-be first-time Olympian, there's a lot of pressure. And again, doesn't feel like Sab felt her shot was necessarily there. Now this, I don't agree with you, Damien, here. Messed up that Sab won't defend her title like Allie Quigley did. Let's not forget that the public effectively bullied Allie Quigley out of retirement, not once, but twice. She was ready to be done, and y'all bullied her. And then what did she do after she came out of retirement twice? I wrote this on social media. She took the next 2 WNBA seasons off. She's like, not only am I not competing in the 3-point contest, I'm not competing in the WNBA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, jokes aside, I really don't understand Sabrina in particular getting the hate that she's getting for not participating. She's a first-time Olympian. You see how much this means to her. And Brian, you and I disagree on something with a Connecticut star on this very same topic. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But, I also want to get back to this comment, disrespectful to her, that being Caitlin Clark, and kind of the fan base, as Roberta was talking about, that is kind of creating these narratives around her and this persona that almost exists outside of Caitlin Clark. And listen, we saw in her last game, Roberta, she was very frustrated, very visibly frustrated. And that's the maturity that has to change for Caitlin Clark. I mean, it just absolutely does. And again, have we seen players like Stewie go from, NCAA championship game, #1 draft pick, all-star, to the Olympics? Well, Caitlin will not be in the Olympics, but we've seen that before. Stewie is the most recent example of that. And the truth of the matter is, right, that yes, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, and this rookie class are at the apex, the highest that we've ever seen viewership and interest in the WNBA. Without question, that's true. And also the advent of social media. So the feedback that they're getting is instantaneous. It comes right away. And for me, I mean, I agree with what you were saying earlier. I don't think it makes sense for her from a marketing and about her brand and about what the fans want, because this is a fan event. But also, does it make sense for the WNBA to have an all-star game in an Olympic year when they know that we're running players ragged and now are just starting to have them prioritize domestic play? I don't know, Roberta. Like, I feel like there's a lot of questions, and I don't like it necessarily for Caitlin Clark, but I'm not getting upset about it.
I think that I do think that the WNBA would be making a huge mistake if they didn't have an all-star game this year. This is, it's a business at the end of the day, and it is important to acknowledge both that it's a business and we're talking about people, and we're talking about people who are talking about the Olympians. They are about to go defend the country in the highest stage in sports, which is the Olympics. And that is 12 American players, right? And then there are other players of other nationalities and other teams. I think that it could make sense to have an all-star game that does not include the U.S. team, that could give them some rest. And that's just a theory. Honestly, I just thought about it. I haven't even had a chance to think it through. But it's somehow.
But then how do you justify that, right? Because the players, and that's kind of what we talked about, Roberta, when we were doing the Seattle Storm podcast, right? Like, how do you justify not having the biggest stars just because they happen to be on Team USA? So that makes me think, I'm going to kick this over to Brian. So I'm going to build on your brainstorm, Roberta. But what if, Brian, instead of having them participate, and hey, some might want to participate, and I think that's fine too. But what if we found ways for them to like coach, or like maybe All-Star during an Olympics, Brian, becomes like a 3x3 tournament, a la Unrivaled, what we're about to see. And then we get a draft, because that's something that people like in non-Olympic years. We get a draft. I guess ESPN would do it. And they kind of get to structure like a 3x3 team.
Yeah, I could kind of see it, because I think ultimately Roberta is right in that you want to minimize the workload people have, because when it's tournament time, everyone's going 1,000 miles an hour. So if you can reduce it, there could be a way. Because I think it's essentially like you want to still have that involvement, because I think especially for the W, everyone's gonna be out of sight for a month. You know, like the Liberty are doing like watch parties for Team USA and Olympics up here, but it's like it's not the same as having all the players like around where you can sort of see them and you can really interact with them in that way. So so I think anything that may sort of like cut that time down even more makes it tough. But I think that, I guess I wonder if you, because I had half a mind to say that anyone who's participating in the games wouldn't be sort of like, we want to have them play in the All-Star game. But a lot of countries like formally announced their teams pretty late. I believe Germany announced theirs a couple days ago. Australia was last weekend.
Their time.
Officially, well, and that's just with FIBA windows. I mean, if you don't have to. But also another thing is those countries are together. I mean, see, this is what I don't think people realize in the United States, because the only team that we have that does that is our women's hockey team, where they go into residency, or centralization is what it's called in Canada. And then they prepare for the weeks leading up to the Olympics just together. Like, you know, like they're at hockey camp or something. And a lot of other federations, Roberta, that's what they do. That's why Gabby Williams isn't in the WNBA. Brian, you know this. That's why Marine Johannes, both of them with Team France. You know, Emma Miesemann, who we gotta pour one out for Misha Jones. And I think it all about the Mystics. But you know, Emma Miesemann, who I guess was she? Well, anyway, that's a whole nother story. You know, Belgium. You know, I don't know. It's interesting, but we are gonna have an All-Star game. We are going to have a 3-point contest, and there is going to be a 3x3 exhibition featuring the USA 3x3 national team set to compete in Paris. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm very curious to see what Ryan Howard is looking like, because we have not seen Ryan Howard in action. But Haley Van Lith will be there. Sierra Burdick, who's an alum effectively of the WNBA, who has done great things for Team USA 3x3. If you don't know, now you know, baby. Haley Van Lith going to reunite with a former LSU teammate, even though now she's at TCU. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. And we're also going to see some other names: Lucy Olson from Iowa, Michaela Williams, also from LSU, Christina Dalce from Maryland, Morgan Malley from Creighton, and on and on. So, you know, I think they're making the most of it. I do wish this announcement would have come a little earlier. Like, baby, I think they sent it at like, what was it, like 10 Central? I was like, who, like, everybody getting ready to go to Phoenix. So why are you dropping this news like that? That's tired. That's trash. That's trash. But, you know, I think, as always, as women especially, and as WNBA players always do, they make the most. Even, you know, when they're given lemons, they make starry soda. So I don't
Amazing.
All right. We had so many other things that we want to talk about. I honestly think we might need the media deal, one, because the WNBPA put out some juicy stuff, which, I be knowing, because listen, you got to read between. I had a whole Twitter war with, speaking of trolls, someone tried to tell me, anyway, go to Black Rosie Media if you want to know about that. But we're going to have to dig a little deeper into that. I want to get into it, especially as more details come, but we're seeing it could be $1 billion deal over 11 years. And yet that's still lowballing the WNBA.
Yep.
I love that is where we're at. I mean, as far as the numbers, I don't love that the WNBA is still not getting their just desserts, as the saying says, but I love that we're having not millions, but billions of dollar kind of conversations and multi-year, not like little cute little 4-6 years, but we talking 11 years, baby.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to get into with that. Man, Cheryl Reeve is wild. And I love it. I love it. Not Country Time. That's hilarious, Aloysius. The powdered lemonade. Listen, not Country Time. That's actually more accurate. Country Time powdered lemonade is honestly the vibe. But anyway, yeah, 2.2 billion, yes, over 11 years. Yes, exactly, which is wild. Like, we ain't never heard those numbers, and yet still being undercut, which is wild. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Cheryl Reeve, this is what I want to talk about. I'm going to take this to you, Brian, because you and I disagreed. You felt that the Connecticut Sun resting Alyssa Thomas was a bad move. I also had a group chat somewhere else where people were like, oh, Stewie not playing in the last game before the Olympics is lame. And I'm like, do y'all think that Cheryl Reeve, she didn't even want to be asked about the pro Caitlin Clark crowd at her home court. Do you think she wants to answer questions? Well, if someone gets hurt, will Caitlin Clark? Like, I guarantee you, if Brittany Griner, the tallest player on the roster, if Brittany Griner tomorrow can't play, you know the headlines are going to be like, Griner out, Caitlin Clark top of list to replace her. And it's like, is she though? Is she though? Because, we're not going to swear because this is live and we're now monetized. Thank you so much for all of our subscribers. And I'm not trying to, get dinged. But, Cheryl Reeve says she doesn't give 2 craps. She doesn't even give 1 crap about the pro Caitlin Clark, the pro Caitlin Clark crowds. It's amazing. I freaking love it. And then, the links. I mean, I guess Caitlin Clark took it personal because the Lynx then lost that game. So, we can talk about that on the other side. But I want to talk about rest because, Brian, you didn't like that AT rested. So talk to me about that.
So I despised it. Like, I had to, like, my initial thoughts were a lot more vulgar that night. So I woke up the next morning. I was like, let me put this in a way that won't get me a talking to from somebody. But my thing with Connecticut is that, okay, so like I double checked to make I watched back the presser in the morning, like the morning when I woke up the day after, and then I think Stephanie was saying essentially that, we've been trying to rest her for the past couple of days. We want to make sure that she's good, that she's not injured, so she's full strength. So I went back to the game log for the Sun post-Liberty game, 25 minutes. 25 minutes, 2 days off in between. 25 minutes again, 3 days off in between. And then in the game on Sunday against Phoenix, she's had the entire fourth quarter. So you have all that time baked in as far as like rest goes and at home the whole time. So no travel, no back and forth, no moving around. And New York, short trip with days off in between. And I think also when you're Connecticut, you're trying to get to that top tier. And who's standing in front of you? New York. One win in the past 2 years, playoffs included. And the one win they got, it was still a close game to the final buzzer. And it took Beck Allen having the WNBA game of her life to get it done. Mm-hmm. And you're in a tie game after 3 quarters. That Liberty team is down 2 starters in Stewie and Lainey Hamilton. Niara sat the entire second half because she just got back from an injury. And all the bigs that New York had left are JJ and Kennedy Berg. Love them both. They're awesome. They're excellent. But AT was getting to it that night. I think she was like something like 8 for 9 from the field. Like, she was finally getting to the rim, finally getting shots at the basket. Because in the first 2 games, like New York's length threw her off. Stewie's length, JJ's length, everybody walled up, made it impossible for her. So AT finally was able to break through against the Liberty team this season. And you're tied after 3. I think the Liberty jumped out to a little bit of a leap, but then you tied it up again, and then it's like, okay, I think it was maybe like 7-8 minutes left. So if you want to keep AT's minutes low, you can manage it in the beginning part of the game, and then it's almost like in baseball where, okay, I know that my starter can't go long, but I have an ace reliever in the back. I can manage the turn to the lineup early, and then I can get my top guy in when I really need it. And if your plan is, oh, let me keep the minutes low, you save her in the front half, sit her a little bit more in the first half, and then be like, hey, it's tied up, bring it home. Like, and I think that, man,
I hear what you're saying, but I also love that you mentioned baseball, because baseball pitchers, very specifically, of which I used to be one, baseball pitchers are very unique. You have starters, you have relievers, and then you have closers. If you are a closer, psychologically and going into your routine, it's not impossible, but you are not optimized at that part of your career to start a game. You are optimized to close a game. There's all kinds of different strategy. It's different fatigue on the body. Now, if I had to guess, because AT has been a starter for a minute now, I think that if you're AT, this is my estimation, and just, this, we're going to have Misha come and talk about this, but you want your starters to start if they can start. Yep. I hear what you're saying about kind of, what the NBA calls load management, which I try not to use that term unless I'm using air quotes for so many reasons. Anyway, like what? But, if you're trying to rest your players, it can be difficult to have someone come off the bench for their pace. Because if this isn't an injury issue, which I don't know that it is or that it isn't, but if this isn't, I mean, other than she's got 2 torn labrums, we already know that. Like, that's like, she's got 2 ankles. I mean, 2 torn labrums. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just AT. But I think that it could be, and I'm not sure, we'll have to, again, talk to Misha or someone else who has played elite level basketball. But I think it's harder than people think to transition from being a starter to a bench player. That's why Dearica Hamby with the Aces was so critical. I think Ezzy, right, has been a player also that has had to be agile in that way, Roberta. And it's more difficult than people, I think, really realize.
Yeah. And just like a side comment, all that information about baseball, it's all very new to me. I just learned so much here. Never would I have imagined.
I'm a baseball nerd.
Never would I have guessed that, like, there is a starter, a reliever, not a reserve, and a closer. Like, my mind is absolutely blown.
Mariano Rivera, the best closer in baseball, definitely of the modern era. Yeah, unfortunately he played video games, but he's still the greatest.
Well, I'm of the opinion that if you're gonna rest a player like Alyssa Thomas, just rest her the whole game, because the impact can be more negative on the long term on her if you get that, like, back and forth. Just like Stewie was rested for that other game.
Yeah, and Nafisa, like Aloysius is asking about. Ryan Howard, who we mentioned.
Yeah, so those players can rest, and I understand that for the Sun, that like a single game means more than a single game for the Liberty. I know that can have a huge impact in the future.
Yeah.
But if you're going to rest someone, not someone, Alyssa Thomas, rest her for the whole game. Yeah. Because there is a reason why players are known as starters and why so many players want to be starters. And there's a reason why so many players have achieved so much success being 6th Woman of the Year, like Ellie Quigley, for example. How many times has she won 6th Player of the Year? So that has a big impact on players, and I don't know if there's some sort of like mental thing going on, because there was a break about to start. Some teams were a little kind of like, we have a big break coming. Some of these players are going to be away. Some of these players are not. I do think that if Alyssa Thomas was playing, she should have played that whole time.
And
And
that's fair too. I think that's
yeah,
what Brian is getting at.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what if she was playing, let her play. You know, the Sun needs that win. They didn't have Stewie. They didn't have Benaja Langley Hamilton. The Sun should have made the most out of that game. I think it was a flop by them, and they should have played Alyssa Thomas or just fully rested her.
I guess, Eric, I just want to sort of stay a little bit on it. I think for Connecticut, I guess the calculus is you want to save AT a little bit for the stretch run. But I think, like to Roberta's point, if you wind up, I think the resting part I would be okay with generally. But I think within this context of the season series for the Liberty, like they essentially punted the season series in a tiebreaker because now it's 3-0 New York. And then there's one game left after the break between the two teams, and Connecticut would have to like go on a big run, and New York would have to struggle. And I don't think the Liberty are going to sort of fall off like that after the break. So that way, Connecticut, if they wind up somehow tied, New York is going to have the tiebreaker advantage. And if you're Connecticut and you wanted like the 1 seed, that unless you get the Liberty out the way, that's completely out the window for you at this point. Like you would have to settle for the 2 seed and then home court the first 2 rounds. And then if you wind up seeing the Liberty again, you start here instead of potentially having the series start in your familiar ground at Uncasville, which I guess the Libs have won there, but it's like you still want to start in your building first if you can control for it. I don't.
Yeah. And I think that's what, again, for me, the question that the league is inevitably going to need to answer. And they've already started doing this with prioritization. Now, whether we like it or not, whether players like it or not, you see that it has created a new ecosystem. We mentioned in passing Unrivaled, but it's creating a new ecosystem where different alternatives are spurring up. And so, you know, you have, in this case, we're talking Stephanie White, but it's not just Stephanie White. It's Sandy Brondello, it's Cheryl Reeve, it's Tanisha Wright, and 2 of those are also Olympic head coaches on their own, in their own respect. So you're putting these coaches, you're putting the athletes, and then you're putting their team in a position where you just, let me say it this way. What I hope at minimum happened is that whatever the plan was and however that plan was going to maybe shift to make in-game, you know, changes, that at least nobody on the bench was surprised. And least among them, the players that were being benched themselves. Like in my mind, I think it went something like this. AT and probably DB, because, you know, they boot up. They came in and they were like, yo, fam, AT about to go to her first Olympics. So this is what we're going to do. Like, of course, we want to win games. And like, we're not fitting to send a broke engine to Paris. You feel me? And they were like, no, you're right. Cool. Tight. So like, we're going to do what we got to do. Like if AT ain't feeling it, she's not feeling it, we're going to sit her. And then they were probably like, all right, cool. Tight. Like, hopefully that's how the conversation went.
Yeah. That's how I pictured it in my head.
Exactly that.
The only way I'm
word for word.
Best version.
Like verbatim, you know, like, and the same thing, Brian, for New York. Like, do you think that New York didn't know that Stewie was going to rest? I don't think so. Like, I feel like out of respect for all of the situations and scenarios, it's like, all right, let's have a conversation. Could Stewie go? Sure. Because she's about to ball out. I already told y'all, I've been on the record on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, that Stewie is going to ball out in Paris. Like, I don't see it any other way. So, but that takes time. She's got 2 children now to prepare to get to the Olympics. Again, I was freaking out and just, you know, because I'm a carry-on gal. I got a whole dang suitcase back here somewhere that I got to lug with me everywhere until I get to Paris, you know, and that's just mild things. Sabrina not doing the 3-point contest. I mean, like, you know what it is really is that I was finishing my packing. I was watching the Simone Biles Rising documentary. So good. But I think what Simone Biles does a good job of is explaining just like the wear and tear mentally and physically that athletes put themselves into. And it can be the smallest thing. And it seems like it's the smallest thing that can trigger bigger things that you effectively suppressed. And for Simone Biles and the twisties, as they're called the yips in baseball, Roberta, just so you know. They're called the yips in baseball. But you know, she said that because they don't have the crowd, the lighting looks different. And so as you're spinning and turning, you're seeing literally more white space, and things are reflecting. And that can be disorienting. Yeah, and that's effectively what she's saying. It's disorienting, and then it gets you into a frame where, at least for Simone Biles, she couldn't get enough energy to refocus her mind. Then that opened up other things. In her case, the unfortunate circumstances behind the sexual abuse that was happening in USA Gymnastics. Once she couldn't shut that valve, everything else opened up. And I was like, yo, that's so real. Like, she talked about grief and trauma in such a real way and related it to athletics. It's a very good doc.
That's why trigger is such like a huge word, right? Like, trigger is something that just, like, you know, can trigger anything. And for me, it's just interesting how you mentioning, I have to watch the Simone Biles documentary, but talking to Sammy Wickham and Azzy McGlure, Azzy mentioned, I think, 2 or 3 times about playing with fans for this Olympic, because the last Olympic that Azzy played, there were no fans, and she was so like she emphasized the importance of having the fans there in such like a big way, right? And I mean, we're not play. I mean, I've played basketball in like a very low level, so they are experiencing this environment that often has a huge crowd. When you think of Seattle, they are averaging about 10,000 per game. So you get somewhere and suddenly there's no crowd. The depth is different. It definitely impacts the game, and it impacts mentally. And this triggered, like, it can be really, I mean, we all experience that in the day-to-day, right? Sometimes we're doing like a lot of things go bad, but we're still like in a good mood, and then that one thing that's like the straw that broke the camel's back. For athletes, if that happens in the middle of the game, there are so many feelings that they are dealing with. It's the feeling of having to perform, having to show yourself in a certain way, think about sponsors. So just the fan presence and having that insight from someone like Simone Biles is huge. It just brought me back to Sammy and Azzy talking a lot about having fans.
I love that you brought that up, and I do want us to also kind of, we're doing this, you know, all-star prep, but I think, you know, this is also a send-off for the Olympics. But what we also know is that at this halfway point in the WNBA season, the New York Liberty and the Seattle Storm are among the top teams in the league. And Damian, you can see Brian here talking. Let me, okay, hold on. Damian talking a little bit about, you know, how that was a good win against Connecticut. And again, with Marina Mabry now going to Connecticut, that was in our shoot around, but we had so many things to talk about. But yes, a big trade, wasn't expecting it. Marina Mabry to the Connecticut Sun, and it's Mojef and Rachel Banham that are going to Chicago. But I want to talk about, actually, I want to talk about the Seattle Storm first. And you mentioned Ezzy and you mentioned Sammy. This is a team, and we talked about this. If you haven't noticed, we launched a new podcast that is Seattle Storm specific, named TBD, and we're going to bring that back when we have the second half of the WNBA season. So Roberta is going to be the co-host with me on that. And in our first pilot episode, you know, we talked about what were the realistic expectations of this team, given that they were kind of slapped the super team moniker. And unlike the New York Liberty, I feel like when things didn't quite work out, they were able to kind of fix things in silence. So, Roberta, where do you see the Seattle Storm? What do you like about where they are at the halfway point? Where do you want to see them improve?
I think that the Storm had phenomenal send off to this break, and what you said about being able to fix what goes wrong in silent it's very Noelle Queen coded, because she's the kind of person who works in silent and she works phenomenally. I think what is working about this team is that you have brought together some brilliant minds in terms of focus, dedication, and basketball IQ. And I talk specifically about uh, Noe, Nneka, Ezzy, and then you have Skylar. And we're talking about these three. I feel like Noe, Ezzy, and Nneka operate in very similar ways. So she is able to translate to those two players what she's trying to convey, and those players are able to convey that same message to the two guards, Jewel and Skylar, who are executing it flawlessly. Uh, you look at Skylar, veteran in the league, she just tied her career high in assists against the Minnesota. You have Nneka, who just passed Lisa Leslie, playing in Los Angeles, in front of Lisa Leslie.
Yeah.
Nneka has been in the league for such a long time, and she's already on 8 20-point games this season. The most she's had in a season was 19 in 2017. I do think she can tie or even pass that coming the second half of the season. And then you have Jewel. Jewel is like the engine of this team. She's the one who moves things. The one thing that concerns me about Jewel is, and people have said that also, is that like she is being very Arike Ogunbowale.
Yes, Dano.
And I gotta agree. I was just going over some numbers, and I saw that I talked to Christian from Circling Seattle Sports, because I can make that number work for me. The official ranking says that the Storm is shooting 24.2% from three, which is worst in the league, and they're still fourth in the standings, and it makes sense, because when you have Jewel Lloyd shooting the way that she shoots, even when it's not a good night for her, she is going to shoot. The difference she was doing that last year. The Storm was losing loads and loads. This year you have Ezzy has help on the rebound with Nneka, so they can have more second chance points on the paint, rebounds.
That's the thing. And what are they leading in, though, Roberta? I was watching the broadcast, and because as you mentioned, they played LA right before the break. Madam Prez, I love this. Yeah, lots of Nneka love in the chat. She's worth it. But what they do well, and also what is very Noelle Quinn, is that they play the best defense in the league. I mean, I think I would say Connecticut's defense is like, they're like bully ball, they play like, bad boy Bill Detroit Pistons kind of basketball, where they will just black and blue you to submission. The difference with the Seattle Storm is that they have very active hands. Like, legitimately, they're in the defensive stance. Like, their hands are always out. They're getting tips, and then that allows them to run because they have speed, they have quickness, they can get out in transition. So even though, and just for those who maybe don't understand the Arike comparison, it's basically someone who shoots with very low efficiency, but is still going to shoot that thing because it's Arike, and you want Arike shooting the ball even if that thing is at 0.2%. Like, I'm like, give her the ball. Yeah,
exactly, because, like, that's their thing, and Jewel Lloyd is going to go 30 points even if she has to go on
Yeah.
very low shooting percentage.
Yeah, I mean, and
That's who they are.
Even that game in LA, I think LA cut their deficit, right?
Oh
They were
yeah.
trailing by 2,
Hmm.
but with their first basket, because Seattle wasn't scoring either. In like
Yeah,
the first 7 minutes of
exactly.
that game, it was like, who put the invisible lid on the hoop?
Exactly.
It was really
Yeah.
crazy. But like, let's keep it funky, Brian, because the New York Liberty sometimes have 10-minute increments where they kind of look like that as well.
Yeah, I think for the Liberty, they have those. It's like like their second quarter blues, especially about a couple weeks ago. It was like every time someone says, like, guys, like you know how to play basketball. What's happening here? They've cut it out a little bit since the Commissioner's Cup game, which I think is a testament to I think the team getting more out of the bench and Sandy sort of turning to the bench a little bit more. Like KB's been excellent. Ivana has really sort of like found a role for herself in the past couple games. Like that game in Chicago on Saturday, Ivana turned the game around in the second quarter. Like it was really great that she got the post game podium because she was amazing in that quarter and she helped sort of stem the tide. And then in the second half, Sabrina took it over and brought it home. So I think for the Liberty, I think it's just a matter of minimizing those droughts long enough. And I think that once we get, I'd say 95% fully healthy again, because B's going to be out for a little bit longer. But once the entire once the band is back together after the Olympic break, I think we'll sort of see everyone at full strength, everyone ready to sort of like make another big push. And they're gonna be on the road to start, so you're gonna have that extra energy because you're gonna need it because you're so far away from home. And then I think when it comes to sort of putting the lineups together, it's gonna be still a great emphasis on getting into the paint and getting those shots that way, and have and those games where if your threes aren't falling, it's okay. I can get to the basket. I can draw free throws. I can get to the line. I can do those things really well. So once my threes aren't there, it's like, okay, I can just get you another way. And I think that versus I think like Erica, you know this really well. I feel like if you talk to Sandy Brondello for like long enough, you're gonna hear paint the great at least once a week. At least once a week, she's gonna say, "Oh, we go paint the great." I'm like, "Yep, Sandy's here this week." So that ethos is really been sort of like drilled into everybody, and I think them getting into the paint really allows them to sort of find offense even when their 3-point shot isn't there, and I think that'll save them in the games where, like like every Connecticut game is in the mud. So like that ability to get in the paint and sort of like box in the mud and wrestle in the mud would help them a great deal. Like the further we go.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying, Brian. I agree also with what Damien is saying. And we've talked about this, right? It hasn't looked pretty at a lot of times for the New York Liberty. And yet, and I think Sabrina in her post-game interview or something recently post-game was saying, last year, those are games that we lose. Those are games that we lose. And yes, I think Nneka would have made a good fit for the New York Liberty. I also think Skylar could have been a nice little thing to put in New York. But I think that I'm curious to see how they build Seattle. But so you heard paint to great, Roberta. That's the ethos, right?
I was trying to understand. I couldn't.
Yeah,
really,
yeah. It's paint. So getting in the paint.
Okay.
I say a lot. JJ has to touch the ball within the first 5 seconds of the offensive shot clock. Like that's just how I feel. And that goes to paint to great. But my question to you is, because I almost feel, just as someone, I watch more New York Liberty games, at least right now, than I do Seattle Storm games. But I almost feel like
it's the other way around.
It might be the other way around. You might need to get the Seattle Storm a little more confident and get their shooters touches a little early, because then that can open things up for Ezi and Nneka. What do you think, Roberta?
I agree, and I think that early on when the Storm started the season, when the Storm was struggling, it's because they couldn't really understand who was going to be they were going to draw their plays to. Like, are we gonna have Jewel or Nneka? being our, the one driving the scoreboard here, or Skylar, or Ezzy. It seems like they know better who is going to be doing the heavy work, and it seems to be very well split between Jewel and NECA. I do think that they need to take the ball out of Jewel's hands a little more often and throw it to NECA or Ezzy. They have the size, they have the skills, and they can command the paint. I feel like they could be better used. And even like just the same way that Jewel shoots, they can make attempts in the paint and grab their own rebound. They can be Andrew Reese,
I was about to say
like, it's easier for them. It's easier for them to guarantee the second chance point than shooting a three. So at the same time, it seems like things have been working for the Storm. I do think that the second half of the season may present a few more challenges, as teams are going to be much more familiar with each other. I think that, for example, the Storm faced short-handed Aces. They lost to the Sun, which was not expected. I do think that, especially with those moves, free agency moves, I do think that they might face a few more challenges, but I am confident that they're gonna finish on a pretty good note.
Yeah, I think the Storm are really interesting. Last year, we talked so much, Brian, about the New York Liberty were like an easy bake oven version of the Las Vegas Aces, right? There was such a short runway, and they were speeding up the process. We heard, now I will still stand on what I said. I ain't like what Kelsey Plum was talking about when she said, you can tell they don't love each other. I was like, Kelsey, you my dog. Don't do that. Don't do that. That was hella disrespectful. And I will stand on that. That being said, what did we talk about at Barclays?
Yep.
I was like, I ain't like it. Them words that she put together, that was disrespectful, and I kind of understood where she was trying to go. But listen, that's not what you said. You ain't say all that. What you said is they don't love each other. You didn't say they haven't had time.
Yeah.
You didn't say they haven't built and established a rapport. That's not what you said. You said they don't love each other, and I don't think that's true. But what is also true, and Sabrina had been talking about this, is that this is a team that they can check each other because they have love for each other, and it's a deeper, more solid love. Seattle, I think they're still building their chemistry, but to me, and it goes back to Noel Quinn, and it goes back to them being an under the radar, quote unquote, super team. I don't think they feel the same pressure to get it done this season that the New York Liberty did.
I think that sorry, Brian. You can go
ahead. I had a question for you guys. Do you think that for a team like the Storm, getting home court advantage should be a big thing they try to get? Because I checked the standings right now. They're tied with Minnesota record-wise, but Minnesota has the tiebreaker right now 2-1, and they're a half a game in front of Vegas at the 5. So I guess I wonder, because I feel like the Storm are a lot better at home compared to the road. So if you're Seattle and you can.
Yeah, exactly. How's she know that? Mind your business. Yeah. Stay in your locker room. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so if you're Seattle and you're able to sort of get that 2 or 3 seed, you instead of being at the 4 and likely a date with Las Vegas or Minnesota in round 1, you sort of try your hand with Indiana or Phoenix, and at least you have the peace of mind knowing that in your sold out Seattle crowds get turned up. When I watch them, man, they loud as hell, dog. And you get.
I have short headphones. I wear headphones for those games because it's impossible.
Yeah, if I'm the Storm and I have a chance to possibly get as high as 2, if I can overtake Connecticut, I get to be home with my fans, first round best of 3. So I got 2 games in my building guaranteed. I wonder if that's a big goal that Noel and the team has, and I wonder if they have. I feel like they're close to Connecticut. I think they're like a game and a half behind the Sun right now, so it's definitely within striking range. I wonder for the Storm, do they make that gigantic push to get there? And I wonder if they can get there.
I believe that they would say that yes, they would prefer to get the home court advantage if they can. Another thing is that I've observed this season, and I asked Neka about it. There is no guarantee who is going to win against who. Like there have been so many upsets, and I was trying to look for the word because in Portuguese we call upsets zebra, which means literally zebra.
Zebra. Why is it zebra? Okay, I need to know the history behind that.
Yeah. So
what is it about a zebra that's so scandalous?
I think it's because it's an animal that you don't see as much. And Rebecca here, she writes with me for Beta Basket, so she's talking about the home advantage. But as sorry, the languages are mixing up in my head. I had a work assessment in Portuguese today, so
that's okay.
So I think that the Storm does want the home advantage, and I do think that they can get it. So you don't know who is going to beat who, and so I do think it's possible for the Storm to finish second. I don't think it's impossible.
I think it's possible. I mean, if we look at we end the halfway point with the New York Liberty and the Seattle Storm with the longest winning streaks going into All-Star break. New York Liberty won 4 critical games. We talked about that on the last episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans brought to you by Black Rosie Media, how they needed to get those 2 wins. 2 wins against Chicago, 2 wins against Connecticut, and they did it. And Sabrina Ionescu, she listen, I don't think we need to, and we've talked about this, I think MVP candidate, if there's a list of 25, she's in there. If there's a list of 15 or 10, yeah. But after that, especially this year when, Asia, she was like, nobody voted for me for it.
No one is taking that. No one is taking it away from
Sad is making a strong case for MVP of the New York Liberty. I think she's most improved, but anyway, we can talk about that. They're 9-1 in their
I think it's Jordan.
10.
Yeah.
There's okay. We got to talk about Jordan too on the Seattle podcast because that is defense. Chef's kiss. Anyway, okay. The New York Liberty 4-game winning streak, 9-1 in their last 10. The Seattle Storm 3-game winning streak, 8-2 in their last 10. But you know who else is 8-2? The Vegas Aces. Now, the Vegas Aces really put themselves in a bind by not coming out the gate playing strong. And Becky Hammond was all over them for that because she was just like, we just not playing how we know how to play. And yes, of course, not having Chelsea Gray, but they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. No other teams are beyond 500. Not Connecticut. They went 5-5. Not Minnesota, who I think Seattle absolutely has to be looking at. We can overtake them. 5-5. Phoenix 5-5. Indiana 5-5. Chicago 5-5. And Indiana and Chicago, I think to your point, Roberta, definitely wild cards. They've proven that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone's really trying to let them rookies beat them. I said that, and I meant it. I do mean it because that's going to be the headline. But also, those are just younger teams that have a lot more. And I don't think they're quite ready for that kind of upset. Minnesota might be running out of steam, out of gas. How much of that is because Fee hasn't been available? Does that change on the other side of the All-Star break? So I think, Brian, your question is really. It's a really great question, and I do think Seattle has to feel good about their chances, but that also means that they just have to shore some things up. I want to get to, we're going to officially enter, we didn't put the quarters up. I should say, did not put the quarters up. But yeah, I agree with Damien. The Aces are going to be fine in the second half.
They are. I think they're going to take off.
Yeah, we kind of knew that. I also think, I'm standing on my business here, Sab is gonna, I think, really, I'm hoping, I should say. I can't say for certain because she's never been an Olympian before, but I think that there is a confidence boost that Sabrina Ionescu could potentially have on the other side of the Olympics, because a lot of her energy, she's so close to just letting it all out, Brian. I really feel that way. But the hesitancy, I feel, is related to her wanting so badly to be mentally, physically, and especially emotionally sharp and sound for her first Olympics, that there's things, she's not slacking. Let's not, that I want to make it evidently clear. That's not what I'm saying. And there's a difference when you perform to an expectation and when you let yourself just be creative and be free. And she's very close to playing like that for the New York Liberty, but I feel like, Brian, she's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I have to, now that you mentioned it, at a practice maybe about a month or so ago, I was talking to her about like the process of like not overthinking on the basketball court, and she gave a really fascinating answer. I'll track down the audio and see if we can post it for on the channel, like of our practice scrum that day. It was really fascinating. And I think one of the things she mentioned was that, like, just trust that what you're doing makes sense. Like she mentioned that in the off season, she really worked to build her body up even more, like get more strength, sort of like work on things in ways that she hadn't been able to in the past. And I think for her, it's really, I think this season has been a culmination of all the work she's been putting in since I'd say since 2022, because the first 2 years were injury racked, and I'm like you were out there on like one good ankle, I'll cut you some break on that. But she's she's been fighting hard. She's been working really hard, and I think and I think for her especially, something that I like. Now that I think about it even more, like the end of that Connecticut game last Wednesday, Sabrina had the ball, no one else, and it's like, okay, she got it. I know she can do something, and then she hit that floater. She got by. Like she bumped off DB enough, got the switch on AT, hit the floater over AT, and that was the game right there. And then she came. Oh,
I'm looking for my keys, Brian, so I can hand them off to Sabrina, because you know I've been saying that. You know I've been saying that. It's time to give her the keys. And I was like, I don't know, maybe my prediction was wrong, but I'm still sticking with it. And here we go. I think that's exactly what you're describing. And again, I think that the Olympics is just that last. The word block keeps coming to my mind, but I don't mean it in a negative way. I think it's just, it's like an anxiety, but not a bad anxiety. It's just like it's an energy, right? That is, it's a little frantic for her right now.
It's gonna be a release.
Exactly. She's so close to this. And it's just like you can kind of feel that her energy is very focused, but it's also still kind of, it's a little sporadic and frantic still. And I think once she gets to Paris, once she's on the other side of that and can then focus on this New York Liberty team, sky's the limit there. So which team, though, which team do we think will improve more after the Olympic break? I'm going to keep this to the two teams that we here at Black Rosie Media are covering. So we've talked a lot about the New York Liberty, Roberta. So what's your case? Make your case on why the Seattle Storm will improve more on the other side of the Olympic break.
I think that so what I think is that on the basketball side, they know where they're at, and they just have to tweak a few things in terms of finding their like chemistry on the court, which has improved in a way that when you look at the ball movement of the Seattle Storm, it's almost like a piece of art. Because I was watching some highlights, and there was this play that I think Sammy had the ball, passed it to Skylar, that passed it to Ezzy, to Neka, came back to Skylar, and she shot a three, and she made that three and gave the Storm like the final run.
Beautiful.
It feels like magnet. They know where each other is, which is scary considering how short of a time they've had to work together. I do think that the Olympic break is going to help those players who are staying here Neka and Skylar said that they are staying in Seattle, and then you have Jordan. Those players working together is going to cause a lot of trouble. Uh, the Storm is playing there for I think 5 games. I think it is Atlanta, Washington, and Chicago. So those are absolutely winnable games. So I think that they're going to start back on a really good run. That's going to give them a lot of confidence, which is going to be very important because right after their run, they have the New York Liberty. And against the New York Liberty, it is very mental for the Storm. It's like there is a certain blockage when they face the Liberty that just like doesn't go well.
I mean, well, there's history there, and it's not bad blood. I mean, but you have who once Sue Bird left, everyone made an assumption that Stewie was going to be right there along Jewel Lloyd when it came to being the next dynamic duo of the Emerald City, and that didn't happen. Stewie came to New York. New York. That didn't happen. And so Seattle, I think, in some ways, whether as more of a culture, as a city, is reconciling that, because I think there's still love there, right? Just like there's still love in LA for Neka. And so that's interesting. But I like that you mentioned the mentality, because there are a few comments here, Brian, about Jonquel Jones. And on this podcast, I've been saying a lot of what we're seeing in the comments, that JJ has been just a little off. I know there's also there's bad blood for some people. I mean, okay, that's fair. All right, it's not all love. Off the court, it's not all love. In the stands, that's hilarious.
Amazing, Rebecca.
But I think Rebecca also mentioned that it's been an off year for Courtney Vandersloot. And we've talked a lot about that on this podcast. I think, just to reiterate, for those not familiar, she lost her mother. She knew as of last season that she, was dealing with cancer. She had a cancer battle, and she was away from the team for a while. So the fact that we're maybe not seeing, or quite honestly hearing from Courtney Vandersloot, is not surprising, given what's happening. We've talked a lot on the show about also that I really respect how the New York Liberty have handled that and have given Courtney Vandersloot grace. It feels like she's getting the grace, the support that she needs, and that they're making sure as a team, kind of like that Olympic conversation we were having, that whether it's spoken or unspoken, and if I had to venture to guess, it's probably more unspoken, they're not putting more on Courtney Vandersloot than she has to do. And they have a team where they have that luxury. That's not what Jewel Lloyd was able to do last year. I mean, and I want to make it clear, she's not going through the same family scenarios. That's not, and I don't want to insinuate that I was trying to make that comparison. I can speak from, unfortunately, personal experience. You cannot compare losing a parent to anything else, period. Nothing. And from a sports perspective, Jewel Lloyd had a lot on her plate.
Yes, she did.
A lot on her plate, and she excelled. And for me, whether it's spoken or unspoken, or whether it's even a mental thing for Jewel Lloyd, her not being able to have that game this season yet, I think is okay. And I think it's almost good, to your point earlier, Roberta, and we talk about this with the New York Liberty, you have to find other people who can step up and step into those roles. So I think both teams are very intriguing. The New York Liberty is the number one team right now. So you have to give them the edge, as far as if they can keep that train rolling and just refine a few things, you have to feel like they like where they're at. But I think Minnesota is really interesting. I think Connecticut could be really interesting on the other side of that trade. But what also could be interesting, and maybe a detriment, is if the New York Liberty don't find a way to have that conversation with Jonquel Jones for a different scenario. But there is something agitating Jonquel Jones this year. And I don't think it's physical, Brian. It seems to be she's under her skin. And sometimes that happens when you're just not comfortable for whatever reason, or you're not finding yourself. We talked about the twisties and the yips in baseball and gymnastics. It almost feels like Jonquel Jones is having a basketball version of that. It's just she's not settling into her game, Brian.
Yeah, it feels like it's been it's kind of sort of like hard to place JJ's recent struggles because it's
Yeah.
like the shot isn't there, but everything else is. The rebounding is
Yeah.
there, the passing is there, and then in the fourth quarter against Connecticut, she made some big plays to keep the Sun at bay. So it's like you see that the all-around game is there for JJ, and Sandy talked about it in the post game Saturday with Chicago because JJ was getting you saw it early. She was getting really mad at herself, like she was missing layups. She's missing not making plays she normally does from sleep.
Yeah.
But then Sandy was like, no. I was like, JJ's fine. Like she's gonna figure it out. And then she's like, in the second half, I told you, she figured it out. So I think for JJ, I feel like this year, I think health is helping her navigate the struggles a little bit more because last year, she was doing it she spent like half the year on a bad foot. And then Erica, I know you mentioned within the documentary during the finals, she had to get the foot checked out. So it's like, oh man, like that you're not at full strength and you're fighting through it. So you feel like the frustration is there a little bit more, and it's like everything becomes like the trigger is a little bit quicker that time because that one bad step is all gonna fall apart. So I think this year for Jonquel, we've seen those moments of frustration, and a friend of mine always jokes that Jonquel versus the referees is like one of the underappreciated storylines in the WNBA. So I'm like, I see it, but I think for JJ, it's been because I saw a stat last night. I think that Sabrina to JJ is the third most assisted pairing in the WNBA this season. Clark Boston's one, Wilson, Young Wilson is two, and then Ionescu Jones is like a very close third. But then JJ hit 23s from Sabrina passes. So you see that the Liberty are able to really sort of find different ways to get her going. And I think for JJ, and I think this also ties to your point about Sabrina sort of having more of a role on offense this year, because that it's not a Stewie Savas season like it was last year. Like last year, there was so much. Hey, Brianna, go and get it for his big dog. This year,
get it for his big dog. And I think that's interesting because I also think Damian makes an interesting point here that other players need to step up, and I think they have been. So I want to focus, though, more on the last part here, because JJ needs more touches, but she can't do the dirty work in the paint alone. And this goes back to actually, Roberta, what I think we're seeing with the Storm is that the attention that they're going to get from opponents defensively is to take away Ezzy's game and to take away Nneka's game. So what do you need? You need that supporting cast, especially, I would say, on the perimeter to be able to shoot. I think with the New York Liberty, they have literally everyone, including what Brian just said, Jonquel Jones, who can do what Walt Hopkins wanted them to do several years ago, right? Which is to be 5 out on the line, everyone's shooting rainbows for days. Well, like they're magically delicious. But, I think the problem, though, is that when you need a physical presence and you have teams that have height in the paint, then all they have to do is just double up and bully ball Jonquel.
Yeah.
And Stewie, while she is a post player, she's a versatile post player. She doesn't have and exude the same physical presence and dominance when she's playing back to the basket. And she doesn't really play that game very much. So, I think it's interesting, Roberta. I guess what I want to ask you and to tee you up is to ask, how much do you see Ezzy's game evolving and opening up now that Nneka is there? Because Mercedes Russell is a great presence and, unfortunately, has dealt with a lot of injuries. And just hasn't been healthy. And so Ezzy has had to shoulder a lot of what's happening in the post, in the paint.
Yeah, at this point, Ezzy is the Storm, paint player. She has Nneka now to help her, but she is. So this is a discussion that we have here in Seattle, like the media members. Is Ezzy? Can we still call Ezzy a center? because she plays more like a stretch 4 than a 5.
So you think
She
she's like
has
the
been
Stewie
shooting.
of the Storm?
You
think she's more of the Stewie
now?
in this scenario?
Yes, I think that with enough practice, it could be Jordan in the future. Same, Rebecca, same. I feel like Jordan has the physicality, she has the speed, she has the skills, and she's already putting up the numbers. If in the future the Storm wants to transition Azzy back into more of a post player role, they could have Jordan as the stretch four.
Okay.
I don't think it would be good for Azzy. I don't think that, talking about her game development, talking about her as a player, and talking about me as a basketball fan, I would rather see Azzy shooting threes. That's something that, and she has been doing that so well, and she's an amazing defender. I do think that in the paint, defensively speaking, she has to be in the paint, because she dominates there. She blocks. She she's just like so powerful in that sense. Because you see, when you look who are the top 2 teams in rebounds and blocks, it's the Storm and the Sky. So they do have
the Chicago Sky. Oh, that's interesting.
Top rebounds in the league.
Yeah. Probably one of their rookies helping out in that category.
I think or so, Yeah, just like, I think or so. And I do think that this comment here from Rebecca, that Azzy has the length to be a player like Elena and Stewie. I agree. I think that
EDD is a good comp. That's a really
good God.
Stewie, but like I like the EDD comp a lot.
Yeah, EDD. She talk about someone who has struggled with injuries. Oh my God, I love her so much. And like sometimes, I hope this doesn't come across wrong. Like sometimes it's like, oh my God, yeah, there's Elena. She's a great player. She's like an amazing player. And I hope it doesn't end up as like a Lauren Jackson situation. But I do hope that she recovers. She gets treated really well and comes back, because we do need Elena in the league. Ooh.
Okay, this is what I feel like there was some telepathy. Is that the right word? Anyway, I feel like we were on the same wavelength, because when we were talking, when the comment about size and having someone help JJ, this is absolutely, Brian, where you miss Steph Dolson. That is Steph Dolson's role on any team, and she's good at it. She is good at it. If you want to have a post player coming off the bench, she's top 5 in the league, hands down for me. Her pick and roll game, the way she can set screens is phenomenal, and she has good size. I think offensively sometimes it's a little give or take, but we don't have enough individual pieces or even collective pieces, in my opinion, Brian, to make up for what Steph Dolson was able to give us. And I don't even think Sandy Brondello was able to fully capitalize on Steph Dolson, but when she did, it was good.
Yeah. It was. She delivered so much with the Liberty. Sorry.
Yeah, year 2 Steph was tough because she had the ankle injury, and that cost her for 3 months or so. And then when she came back, it's like, oh, it's playoff time. JJ's like full strength. She gonna ride out. Yep. So it was a tough break for her in that regard.
This is perfect. A b-ball linebacker, but like for real though, I don't even know football that well, and I'm like, yep, that's exactly it. A b-ball linebacker.
Yeah, so I think I saw the other comment about Niara. I think that we were talking to her a couple of days ago, and she mentioned that just the second rotation helped her, because the first one she's like, oh my God, I haven't played in a month, I'm out of breath. And then once she got more comfortable, it's like, okay, I feel good. I know how to get back to my spots. I know what I'm doing well. And I think even in the game on Tuesday, like in her first rotation, like she looked pretty solid. Like I think she had a good block. Like she has some good finishes at the rim. So I think for Niara, it's such a shame, similar to Steph last year, where an ill-timed injury really sort of threw a wrench into what she was doing. Because before she got hurt, like in that first Sky game, Niara was the best player on the court for Liberty that night, in my opinion. Like she gave them like a really
solid minutes.
Like she was good in the paint. She did everything well, and then she got hurt, and it's like, oh man, there's another setback. So I think. Tough. Yeah, so I think for her, I'm excited to sort of, I guess we'll get to it a little bit later. I'm excited to see what she looks like in the Olympic context, to see if her health is strong enough to really go on a big run in the games, and then when she comes back, what it looks like. Because I think for the Liberty, they're still trying to win, but then they're also trying to sort of make sure that they don't sort of push the button too hard in the regular season, because when playoffs come, everyone,
because they look tired. They looked deer in headlights. They couldn't come up clutch, and we're seeing that they're able to do that. And yes, Damien, I saw your comment about them keys. I actually didn't see it when I was talking about the keys, but I saw it after the fact. Yes. Give Sabrina them keys. Give her them keys. And you know what? I think Stewie's game I don't know if it's that it'll evolve, but it definitely will focus a little bit differently when Sabrina is the leader on the New York Liberty, without question. Now, does that mean we don't need heroics from Stewie, from JJ, from Lainey Hamilton, from KT? Of course not. What I think needs to happen, though, is that Sabrina Ionescu needs to be the one facilitating the emotions, the energy, and not just through her play, but with her leadership. And you know who does that really well for her team, even though it's only her first year? Roberta, Skylar.
Is Skylar freaking digging Smith. Yep. Amazing.
He just reminds people, and when she is saying F, like when she's saying every other word, she's in the zone. She's in the zone. And that's when I'm like, don't even try to win this game, because Skylar is on the money.
I understand. Like when you're like, because I'm kind of like Skylar. If I'm like feeling it, I'm gonna curse like a sailor. So I'm like, go, girl. You go.
I love it.
Yeah. She's so happy.
That's
also
what she does. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's her persona. I was a UConn fan growing up, hated watching Skylar. I couldn't stand her because I was like, yo, stop terrorizing my team. That's what she does. She gets into this zone, and Sab has that. It looks very different, and it's mostly from what she does offensively. And that's what Skylar does as well, but Skylar drives, she slashes, she gets other players involved. That's what Skylar does, and Skylar has the leadership that I think Sab can build into. But one thing is for sure, Skylar Diggins-Smith is the match. She is the flame for that Seattle Storm team. And right now, from a passion perspective, it's still jury's out for me, Brian, on who that is consistently. Who, when they speak, everyone listens. When they're quiet, everyone also listens and pays attention, because why are you quiet? What's going wrong? How'd I mess up? When your mama just sitting there and just and you're like, oh, clean some
what
stuff
did I do wrong?
Quick. Let me clean something real quick.
Say something. Don't be quiet. Silence is worse.
Yes, that's so much worse. That's what the New York Liberty needs, and I'm still betting money that it's Sabrina. It's just going to look different than Skylar, but Skylar is a perfect prototype for what the New York Liberty still need.
Yeah, I think for Sabrina, something that I think some of the players have been talking about, Ivana in her post game, on Tuesday night, she mentioned that she and Sabrina have really sort of developed a good bond throughout the year, and Sandy has mentioned that Sabrina has really sort of uplifted Ivana, really given her that confidence when they play together. So I think for the Liberty, it's almost like a co-leadership in a sense where it's like if Stewie's not doing the talking, Sabrina is. And with Brianna out the past couple games, it's been really Sabrina being the one who sort of like drives the bus down the stretch. Like to Chicago, she took it home. Connecticut, I would say, was a more total team effort, which she shouted out. Like Kennedy was amazing off the bench. JJ got her buckets in the fourth quarter, and you saw the defense sort of lock in the ways that it did. So I think for the Liberty, it's a co-leadership thing, and I think also an accountability thing because, like with Sabrina in particular, like in the Vegas game, she was playing terribly in the third quarter, and she had a really bad turnover. And Sana was like, "Hey, how about you sit here?" And that made Sabrina mad. And then it was like, okay, I got what I needed. That I needed that sort of like check from the boss, and now I'm fully locked in and ready to work. So I think for the team, I think it's just a matter of everyone sort of keeping each other on their toes, so that way you don't get those lulls very often.
Exactly.
And you don't have. There's only like really one game where I'd say that they've been completely non-competitive, and that was the CBS game against Minnesota. Like they fought back, like, oh boy, this is not. You could sort of see the rage in Sandy's like demeanor in the post game because she was like, "Man, I told them, I'm like, yo, what are you guys doing? Like, I told y'all what to do. Like, this is not. Not like." I didn't teach you.
She's like, don't put that on me. She's like, don't put that on me. I done told them, so I don't know what you want me to do.
It was very much like the parent who's like, I didn't teach you how to act like that. Why are you acting like that?
Right, you know better. Yeah, that's
hilarious.
Yeah, and then the team has really sort of like responded, and you sort of see the effort, the versatility of the roster, the consistency of everyone sort of like doing their best to sort of push together in one direction. And I think that's helped make things a lot smoother. And I think that when we get into more high stakes basketball coming down the stretch, everyone on the team knows that, okay, we like,
I'm weak.
Amazing.
Yes, be like that book club. That's hilarious. But I think you're right, Brian. I think, it's definitely not always one person. I think sometimes it does need to be a little bit more, if I'm being honest, but the Liberty are built a little bit different. And when you don't have a Skylar Diggins-Smith, and you have players that are a little bit more, their demeanor is a little bit different, then that's how you're going to get the leadership. But we're going to go around the horn and talk about what we're excited about. So sorry, hold on. Got more comments there. This is the one I want to say. So Big Ellie gonna be in Phoenix. It's not Ellie's party, but isn't it? It always is Ellie's party. So in addition to the mascots, we didn't even get into Diana Taurasi has a court named after her while she's still playing for the Phoenix Mercury. Like there's a part of me that thinks that's weird. Like I'm just gonna be honest. I just think it's weird.
It's a little dark.
Are we gonna get a DT retirement announcement in Phoenix? Like I feel like that's something DT would do, but also like no. Go ahead,
I feel like DT will be more of like peace and just like not even like
instead of I'm back, it'll be like I'm out.
Yeah, she's just like oh yeah, I have to tell those sleep. And like she posts on Twitter like, "Hey, I'm done. Bye."
That's it. It has to be live, quick, and at least something very inappropriate. Yeah, you're probably right.
I love that. It's gonna be her in Argentina drinking wine.
Yeah, right.
And be like, "That's my life now. Bye.
See ya. Never coming back. Yeah. Lose my number. I will not see you in the lobby." That's the tweet. I will not see you in the lobby.
Yeah.
Brian, go ahead. What were you going to say about DT?
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine, and it would be deeply hilarious if the league put the All-Star game in Phoenix for the purpose of, this is very much going to be we're just in case this is Diana's goodbye, and then she's back
Yeah,
in 20 and it's like, wait,
that is so DT. You're right. And honestly, everything is feeling like the league and the Phoenix are preparing for it to be her last season. But you're right, Brian. The most DT thing to do is to come back for like another 4 years just to be like, F all you mofos.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Also, another thing, it's her 6th Olympics, which is also like, could also be, you know, it could be like like her retirement year could be like her 6th Olympics, All-Star game in Phoenix, having a playoff run, blah, blah.
All we need is Penny to say she's having another baby, and then it's like she's got the whole trifecta going.
Same. Whatever Penny told me to do, I will do.
This is hilarious. My wife said I'm done. That's a good one. Book it. Oh man. But so I love it. For me, I'm most excited to see speaking of, so we didn't really get into it, but Steph Dolson,
Big Mama.
Come on, Big Mom Steph, let's go. Shout out for the big girls in the 3-point contest.
Yep.
JJ has competed before. She was a runner-up in her MVP season, as a matter of fact.
And Brittany Griner in the skills challenge.
That's true. That's out. Right out for the big girls. Hey, let's go. I'm here for it.
I have a question. Do you think that they've made the Mabry Sun jersey already, or is she just gonna have a generic WNBA shirt?
Oh my gosh! You're right. Actually, that's what everyone's gonna be watching for.
Yeah,
that's what everyone's gonna be watching for. Or I'm totally making this up. This is unserious. This is meant to be humor. The next thing that comes out of my mouth. Will Angel Reese hold Caitlin's hand like she held Kaiser's?
Oh.
We should do like the Elle Duncan show does and just make up fake headlines.
Amazing. I love that.
Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese holding hands at All-Star Game.
Oh my God. I am not looking forward to some of the headlines that are going to come out of it, but I am looking forward to some of it.
I know. I am, but I'm not.
Yeah,
but I am. Oh
you know,
my God.
The kombucha meme, that's how I'm feeling.
Listen, Damien. Listen. It's positionless basketball. Don't hate on the bigs. Let them have their
basketball,
fun too. I want a big to win the skills competition, the 3-point contest, MVP, and every single post player to dunk. I want dunks on dunks on dunks.
Yep.
You know they're gonna make some first timer dunk. That's like tradition in WNBA All-Star. Whoever the youngest post player is, they like, no, you gotta throw it down.
I was gonna say Camila, but she's already on the plane to Brazil, so she's like, I'm out. Live on the plane.
Such a tourist. I love that. All right, y'all. I have to eat. Like, I literally haven't eaten.
Oh my God.
I was on Central Time yesterday. So I should probably do something about that. Especially because there's an event for La Crema. They're going to have us sipping wine. I'm going to be like, where's the cheese and crackers? I will sleep well tonight. But thank y'all so much for joining us for our preview. And of course, we had to talk about the Seattle Storm. Welcome, of course, to Roberta Rodrigues, who is going to be our new co-host of our forthcoming Seattle Storm podcast. And of course, Brian Fleurantin, holding it down for the GGU crew. Gotta get up. A podcast for New York Liberty fans. Be good, fam. Listen, we got off a little bit of our jokes here, but we hope it's all fun. No negative vibes. Let some people rest. They're going to be all right because everyone is going to be cooking when we get on the other side of this Olympic break. But now, with her suitcase this time, that's hilarious. Yo, when Camilla said she left Chicago without her suitcase, I'm like, fam, yo, what is with this child? She's hilarious. That's right. It's the Beverly wave, the Ellie wave, the awkward wave. It's time to go, y'all. Thank you so much.
Have fun in
next
Phoenix.
time, thank you. Yeah, Phoenix. Next time I connect, I'll probably be in London and or Paris because I will be following the women's basketball tournament. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, the Gold Medal Dispatch, and all of that jazz. Now it's time to awkwardly wave goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night. Go eat. I know I will.